Delivery girl donated blood to a dying stranger, unaware he was a ruthless mafia boss. The rain wasn't just falling, it was attacking. It hit the cracked windshield of Maya Collins's sedan with a rhythmic violence that matched the throbbing in her temples. It was 20 minutes past 11 at night, and Brookmore's Dock District was a watercolor painting of neon smears and deep, wet shadows. Her car, a 15-year-old sedan that smelled faintly of stale fries and engine trouble, rattled to a stop outside the Salty Gull Diner. This was her last delivery for Insta Foodie, a gig that paid just enough to keep the lights on and not a penny more. The bag on the passenger seat, bearing the logo of a different, cheaper Chinese place, was heavy. Lo mein and regret, she thought. She killed the engine, and the sudden silence was replaced by the roar of the wind whipping off the nearby river. Maya checked her phone. No tip pre-added, of course. She pulled the hood of her thin jacket over her dark hair, grabbed the plastic bag, and plunged into the downpour. The diner itself was closed, a sorry sign taped inside the greasy glass door. The delivery instructions on the app were simple. Back alley, ring bell. Maya's skin prickled. A back alley delivery in this part of town was a special kind of stupid. But the 24-year-old knew that rent and medical bills didn't care about personal safety. She clutched the bag and her keys, weaving one key between her knuckles, and navigated the narrow, flooded alley. It stank of stale beer and rotting fish. Halfway down, past a mountain of overflowing dumpsters, she saw a shape slumped against the brickwork. It wasn't a drunk. Drunk snored. This shape was utterly silent, half hidden by a rusty fire escape. "Hello?" she called out, her voice thin against the storm. "I have your food." No answer. Just the relentless drumming of the rain. She took 2 steps closer, her phone's flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The light hit wet black fabric, a pale hand, and a dark, spreading stain that wasn't rainwater. Maya gasped. Dropping the food, the plastic bag split, scattering containers across the grimy pavement. She rushed forward. The man was large, dressed in an expensive-looking black suit that was now soaked and ruined. He was slumped over, his head bowed. She could hear a faint, wet rattle every time he tried to breathe. Hey, are you okay?" She knelt, her knees instantly soaking through her jeans. She touched his shoulder. He groaned, a low, animal sound of pure agony. He listed sideways, and the weak alley light caught the devastating wound in his side. He was bleeding. A lot. Maya fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking so badly she almost dropped it. 911. She had to call 911. Before she could dial, a heavy steel door she hadn't even noticed screeched open just feet away, spilling sterile white light into the alley. A woman in dark blue scrubs, her face hard and exhausted, stood framed in the doorway. "Don't call the cops," the woman commanded, her voice sharp. He's bleeding. He's dying," Maya stammered. "I know. Bring him in. Now." The nurse, for she had to be a nurse, stepped out and grabbed the man's arm. "I can't lift him alone. Help me." Maya, running on pure adrenaline, hooked her arms under the stranger's other shoulder. He was heavy, a dead weight of muscle and wet wool. Together, they grunted and dragged him through the doorway and into a brightly lit, sterile hallway. The steel door slammed shut, cutting off the storm like a switch. They were in what looked like a small, private clinic. It was clean, efficient, and clearly not registered with the city. "Get him on the table," the nurse ordered. They maneuvered him onto a steel examination table. The nurse was already ripping his shirt open, revealing a horrifying, messy wound on his abdomen. She swore, her voice low and professional. "He's lost too much. His pressure is non-existent. I need to stop this. But he's already in shock," she said, her hands flying as she grabbed tubing and a bag of saline. "He needs blood, or he's dead in 10 minutes. "Call a hospital," Maya said, backing away, her hands covered in the man's sticky, warm blood. "He'd be dead before the ambulance got here, and people like him." She gestured to his expensive watch and the sharp, tactical cut of his suit. "Don't go to hospitals, not with bullet holes." A bullet hole. Maya's stomach turned. The nurse looked at her. Her eyes narrowed. "What's your type?" "What?" "Your blood type." What is it? I, I'm O-negative. Maya said. Why? The nurse's expression shifted, just slightly, a flicker of desperate hope. So is he. I checked his tags. She pointed to a dog tag chain Maya hadn't noticed, tucked under his ruined shirt. He needs it now. I don't have a supply. He was on his way here when they got him. You're his only chance. I can't, Maya said, shaking her head. I have to go. My brother. He's waiting for me. She was exhausted. She was terrified. This was not her problem. Look at me, the nurse snapped. Maya's eyes met hers. I'm not asking you to join his club. I'm asking you to save a human life. He dies right here on this table in the next 5 minutes. If you walk out that door, that's on you. Or you sit in that chair for 15 minutes and he lives. Your choice. Maya looked at the man on the table. His face was pale, beaded with sweat and rain. He was young, maybe in his early 30s, even unconscious. His features were strong, sharp, a harsh kind of handsome. He let out another pained, shuddering breath. He was a person, a dying person. Her own exhaustion, her own fear, felt small and petty in the face of that final, rattling breath. She swallowed the lump of fear in her throat. Okay, do it. The relief on the nurse's face was instant. Chair, now, arm. The next 15 minutes were a blur. The nurse, who never gave her name, was brutally efficient. She prepped Maya's arm with an iodine swab, the sting grounding her. The needle was thick, and Maya winced. Looking away, she focused on a small crack in the acoustic tile of the ceiling. She watched the dark, life-giving fluid drain from her body into the clear bag. The nurse was already working on the man, an IV line in his other arm, presumably pumping in the saline. There were no forms to sign, no questions asked, just the sterile hum of a machine Maya couldn't see and the steady drip of her own blood. When the bag was full, the nurse disconnected her with practice speed, slapped a cotton ball and medical tape on her inner elbow, and immediately turned back to the man, hanging the bag of blood on a rolling stand. You're done, the nurse said, not looking at her. Is he? Will he be okay? Maya asked, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. She felt lightheaded. He's got a chance now, which is more than he had before. The nurse was already connecting the tube to the man's arm. You need to leave, now. Go out the way you came in. And you never saw this. You were never here. You got a flat tire on the way home. Understand? Yes, Maya whispered. Go. Maya stood on shaky legs. She looked one last time at the man on the table. His breathing seemed a little less ragged. Or maybe she was just hoping it was... She backed out of the room, pushed open the heavy steel door, and was immediately assaulted by the rain and the wind again. The alley was empty, save for the spilled lo mein and her discarded bag. She stumbled back to her car, her arm aching. She slumped into the driver's seat, the smell of stale fries welcoming her back to reality. Her hands were still stained with his blood. She sat there for a full minute, the world tilting slightly. Then she started the car, the engine catching on the third try, and drove away from the docks. The image of the nurse's hard eyes and the man's pale face burned into her mind. The drive home was slow. She had to stop twice, dizzy and trembling from the blood loss and the adrenaline crash. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a run-down walk-up. The hallway smelled of old cabbage and damp. She unlocked the 3 deadbolts on their door and eased it open. The tiny living room was dark, save for the blue glow of the television. Her younger brother, Eli, was asleep on the pull-out sofa, his breathing soft. At 17, Eli was all sharp angles and pale skin, still recovering from the surgery that had supposedly fixed his heart murmur, but had instead plunged them into a debt so deep Maya couldn't see the bottom. She walked over and gently brushed his dark hair off his forehead. He stirred, blinking. Maya, you're late. Sorry, kid, just a flat tire in the rain. The lie came easily, tasting like ash. How are you feeling? Did you take your 8 o'clock meds? Yeah, my chest hurts a little. He mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. Did you eat? I'm not hungry. She tucked the thin blanket around his shoulders. Go back to sleep. She went into the tiny bathroom and scrubbed her hands, watching the stranger's blood swirl with the soap and vanish down the drain. She peeled the tape off her arm. The puncture wound was already bruising. A small, dark mark. She stared at her reflection. Her eyes were wide, shadowed with exhaustion. She looked like someone who had just seen a ghost, or maybe had just stopped someone from becoming one. She kept her secret locked tight behind her ribs, right next to the crushing weight of the hospital bills stacked on their kitchen counter. She had saved a man's life tonight, and she didn't even know his name. 3 days later, Dominic Moretti woke up. The first thing he registered was pain, a deep, controlled burn in his side. The second was the antiseptic smell of the clinic. The third was the heavy, loyal presence of his bodyguard, Marco, sitting in a chair by the bed. "They missed," Dominic said, his voice a dry rasp. "This time." Marco replied, his face grim. He passed his boss a glass of water. "The Silvas. It was a setup. Internal. We're handling it." Dominic drank, the cool water soothing his raw throat. He remembered the rain, the alley, the sudden shocking impact as bullets ripped through the car door, his driver dead, him, stumbling, trying to get to the clinic. Then, nothing. "The nurse. She said..." He tried to sit up, but a fresh bolt of pain sent him back to the pillows. "Blood. I lost too much." "You did," Marco confirmed. "You were flatlining when she got you inside. The hospital bank? No, there was no time. A civilian, a delivery girl. She found you in the alley." Dominic froze. A civilian in this world. Civilians were liabilities, loose ends. "She saw my face. She saved your life. Boss, she was O-negative. The nurse said you were minutes from being gone. The girl donated. Right here." Dominic was silent. Processing. He ran the Valentini syndicate with a precision that bordered on paranoia. He trusted no one outside his inner circle. And now, his life was tied to a complete stranger. A delivery girl. "Where is she?" he demanded. The nurse told her to run, to forget it, but... Marco pulled a folded, slightly damp piece of paper from his pocket. "I found this in the alley. A delivery receipt. Maya Collins." It was easy work for a man like Marco. A few database searches, a quiet visit to the diner. Within an hour, he had an address, a grainy photo from a social media profile, and a history. "She's 24, Marco reported, standing at the foot of Dominic's bed, works 2 gig jobs, lives in the Heights, sole guardian of a minor brother. Eli, 17. He's got a bad heart, piles of medical debt." Dominic listened. No connections. No criminal record, save for a minor shoplifting charge when she was 19. Just poverty. Just a normal, struggling person. "She hasn't talked," Marco added. "No police reports filed for the area. No chatter. She's either smart or scared. Or both," Dominic mused. "Stay on her. I want to know where she goes, who she talks to. I want to know what she eats for breakfast. Discreet. No contact. Understood." For the next week, Dominic recovered, his body knitting itself back together with frustrating slowness. And every day, Marco reported. He watched from the tinted windows of a black sedan, 2 blocks away from her apartment. He saw her leave before dawn to pick up a catering shift. He saw her haggard return, long after dark, from her food delivery route. He watched her buy generic brand cereal at the corner bodega. He watched her ride a beat-up motor scooter, the engine whining in protest. He saw her argue with a pharmacist, her face tight with humiliation and anger, before leaving with only half the prescription she needed for her brother. He saw a young woman drowning in a life of quiet desperation, yet who hadn't hesitated to save a bleeding stranger in an alley. Dominic, a man who lived by a code of violence and ruthless control, found himself utterly intrigued. She was the complete opposite of his world. She was simple. She was strong. She was clean. Meanwhile, Maya felt like she was losing her mind. It started as a flicker in her peripheral vision. A dark car parked down the street. Always there when she left. Gone when she came back. The feeling of being watched as she walked her scooter to the curb. She told herself it was exhaustion. She was working 18-hour days. She was stressed about Eli, whose cough was getting worse. She was probably anemic from the blood donation, But the feeling persisted, a shadow that melted away when she turned, a man in a dark coat, half a block behind her, who suddenly ducked into a bodega. Nothing threatening happened. No one approached her. But the unseen pressure was building, making the fine hairs on her arms stand up. She started taking different routes home, her keys once again clenched in her fist. She was dropping off an order one evening, a simple pizza delivery, when she felt it again, the prickle on her neck. She scanned the street. Nothing. Just a black Audi parked across from the apartment building. She finished the delivery and hurried back to her scooter, her heart hammering. She was just tired, just paranoid. Back in his penthouse, miles away. Dominic looked at the high-resolution photos Marco had just handed him. Maya, looking over her shoulder, her face pale with fear. "She's noticing you." Dominic said, "It wasn't an accusation." "She's observant," Marco replied. "She's scared." "Good. Scared is safe." Dominic tossed the photos on his marble coffee table. He was bored of watching. He wanted to see her up close. He wanted to hear the voice of the woman who now had his blood running through her veins. "She's working tonight," Marco said, anticipating the thought. "Insta-foodie." Dominic picked up his phone. He opened the app, his fingers flying across the screen. He selected the most expensive sushi restaurant on the platform. He ordered one of everything. He set the delivery address for a shell property he kept in a luxury high-rise. And he typed in the name Dom Rossi. An hour later, Maya stood outside the penthouse apartment, her cheap plastic Insta-foodie bag feeling ridiculous in the opulent, silent hallway. The tip on this order was more than she'd made in the last 2 days. She rang the bell. The door opened immediately. The man standing there wasn't a doorman. He was tall, dressed in a simple gray cashmere sweater and dark pants. He was handsome in a way that was almost brutal, with dark eyes so intense they seemed to see right through her. He looked familiar. "Maya?" he asked. His voice was low and smooth, a rumble that vibrated in her chest. Yeah, order for Dom Rossi?" she managed, holding out the bag. He took it, their fingers brushing for a fraction of a second. A jolt, like static electricity, shot up her arm. He didn't look at the food, he just looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "You look tired," he said. It wasn't a pickup line, it was a simple statement of fact. Long shift. She felt exposed, her damp hair, her old jacket, her exhaustion. "That'll be..." "Well, you paid on the app. Wait." He turned, disappearing for a moment, then returned. He held out a folded bill. Maya looked down. It was a $100 bill. "Oh, no, I can't. The tip was already..." "Take it," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. "For the trouble. The weather is bad." She hesitated, but the image of Eli's empty prescription bottle flashed in her mind. She took the money, her cheeks burning. "Thank you. Thank you very much. Drive safe, Maya," he said, his voice soft. The way he said her name, like he knew it, like it mattered. It unsettled her more than the $100. "Yeah, good night." She practically ran back to the elevator. As the doors slid shut, she saw him still standing in his doorway, watching her. Dominic Moretti closed his door. He dropped the sushi, untouched, on the hall table. He had seen the bruise on her arm, the faint, fading mark from the needle that had saved his life. He had seen the exhaustion in her eyes and the pride that warred with her desperation. He was in trouble. The head of the Valentini family, was completely, hopelessly intrigued by a delivery girl. For 2 weeks, the $100 bill Dom Rossi had given her sat in an envelope labeled Eli Emergency. Maya had gone back to her route, the memory of the intense, quiet man in the penthouse fading into the daily grind of exhaust fumes and lukewarm fast food. The feeling of being watched had subsided, replaced by the more immediate fear of her sedan's failing transmission. Then, the delivery ping lit up her phone, the same address, the same name. This time, her heart didn't just flutter, it hammered. It was a stupid, dangerous feeling. She took the order, a high-end Italian dinner that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. When the elevator doors opened, he was already waiting in the hallway, leaning against the doorframe. He wasn't in a sweater this time, but a perfectly tailored black suit, though his white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, the tie gone. He looked stressed, tired, and impossibly handsome. "You again," he said. It wasn't a question. A small, tired smile touched one side of his mouth. "You must really like this app. Mr. Rossi," she said, trying to keep her voice professional, light. He took the bag, his fingers brushing hers, the same jolt. This time, she saw him register it, his eyes darkening for an instant. "I like the service." He didn't move. He just watched her, his gaze analytical, as if he were trying to solve a complex puzzle. It made her feel clumsy, exposed. "Well," she said, stepping back. "Enjoy your meal." "Maya." She stopped. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a small, thick envelope. Not $100 bill, something else. "What's this?" "My company," he said smoothly, "is looking for a new catering coordinator, someone reliable. Someone who knows the city's food scene." She stared at the envelope. I'm a delivery driver. You're reliable, and you're observant." He pushed the envelope into her hand. "It's a salaried position. Full benefits, health insurance." Her breath caught. Health insurance. Those two words were a holy grail. They meant Eli's medication. They meant checkups. They meant not having to choose between the power bill and the pharmacy. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet. The card for the head of operations is in there. Call him. Tell him I sent you." He paused. "It's a real job, Maya. You're better than this gig." He stepped back inside and closed the door, leaving her alone in the silent, carpeted hallway, clutching an envelope that felt heavier than a brick. He disappeared after that. She clutched the business card for 3 days, but her pride and a deep, instinctual fear kept her from making the call. It was too easy. Rich men didn't just hand out jobs like that without expecting something in return, and she had nothing to give. Dominic Moretti stood in the center of his real office, a soundproofed room 20 floors above the city, staring at a wall of security monitors. The penthouse was a front. This was his center of operations. He was family, Marco said, his voice low. He held a tablet displaying a man's file. "Leonardo, your uncle's cousin. He's been feeding information to the Silvas for 6 months. He gave them your route the night of the ambush." Dominic looked at the face of his betrayer. He felt nothing. No anger, just a cold, metallic emptiness. This was the part of his life he hated, the necessary, bloody accounting. "Where is he?" "He's running. He knows we're onto him. He'll head for the coast." "Find him," Dominic said. "Don't bring him back." Marco nodded, turning to leave. "Marco." The bodyguard paused. She didn't call." "The job," Dominic said, feeling a strange, unfamiliar twist of disappointment. "You offered her a 6-figure job with full medical. She's living on ramen and driving a death trap. And she didn't call," Marco observed. "She's not just honest, she's proud. Or she thinks you're trying to buy her." "I am trying to buy her," Dominic said, his voice rough. "I'm trying to buy her safety. I'm trying to get her out of the line of fire. She's not for sale, boss, and she doesn't even know she's in danger." Dominic turned from the monitors, rubbing the bridge of his nose. The wound in his side ached. He was torn. Part of him wanted to descend into the violence, to hunt Leonardo himself, to rip the Silva family apart for what they had done. He wanted to reclaim the control he had almost lost in that alley. But another part of him, a quieter, more human part, just wanted to drive to the Heights and watch her argue with the bodega owner over the price of milk. He was split between the man he had to be and the man this woman's simple, unknowing sacrifice made him want to be. "Tighten the surveillance," Dominic ordered. "She refused the help. That means she's still exposed. I want 2 men on her. Full time. She stops for gas. I want to know. She gets a paper cut. I want to know. And Leonardo? Find him," Dominic repeated, his voice turning to ice. "But I stay here. I have other interests to protect." Maya was in the worst part of Brookmore, an industrial dead zone near the old rail yard. It was almost midnight. The app had promised a $30 tip for a delivery to a warehouse night shift crew. She needed that $30. She had just dropped off the food and was walking back to her scooter, parked under a flickering orange streetlight. The air was dead and cold. Two men stepped out from between a pair of dumpsters. They were not wearing uniforms. They were wired, their eyes wide and desperate. "Hey, sweetheart." "That's a nice phone," the taller one said, blocking her path. "Just leave me alone," Amaya said, her hand tightening on her keys. "We just want the phone." "And your cash," the second one said, smiling, showing stained teeth. He grabbed her arm. Maya reacted on instinct. She swung her heavy delivery helmet, cracking the man across the face. He howled, staggering back. The first man lunged. He grabbed her by the jacket, slamming her back against the brick wall. Her head hit the mortar, and white spots exploded in her vision. He pinned her, one hand over her mouth, the other fumbling for her pockets. She was kicking, thrashing, but he was too strong. Panic, cold and absolute, seized her. Then it just stopped. A black sedan, an Audi, had rounded the corner, its tires silent on the pavement. It hadn't screeched, it had just arrived. Before the mugger pinning her could even turn, two men were out of the car. They were blurs of motion. They wore dark suits, no casual street clothes. One of them, a large man with a shaved head, Marco, though she didn't know his name, grabbed her attacker by the hair and slammed his face into the brick wall. Once, with a sickening, wet crunch, the man collapsed. The second assailant, the one she had hit with the helmet, tried to run. The other shadow man moved with an impossible, fluid speed. He didn't chase. He intercepted. There was a brief, brutal flurry of punches, short, hard, professional. The man went down and did not get up. It was over in less than 5 seconds. Maya was slumped against the wall, gasping for air. The two men stood over the fallen muggers. They didn't check their pulses. They didn't seem to care. One of them, the big one, turned his head. His features were hidden in the shadow. He looked at Maya, then at her scooter. He pointed. "Go home," he growled. The voice was deep, impersonal. Then they were back in the car. The doors closed with a heavy, solid thud. The Audi pulled away, turned the corner, and was gone. Maya was left alone in the sudden, echoing silence, with two unconscious men at her feet. She didn't wait. She scrambled onto her scooter, her hands shaking so violently she could barely turn the key. She sped away, not looking back. She didn't know who they were. They weren't police. They were too fast, too efficient, too final. They were the shadows she had been afraid of, and they had just saved her life. 2 nights later, her scooter's back tire popped. It wasn't a slow leak. It was a sudden, violent hiss. The scooter wobbled, and she barely managed to guide it to the curb without crashing. She was on a long, dark stretch of road, miles from home, her shift over. Her phone was on 10% battery. "You've got to be kidding me," she whispered, kicking the flat tire in frustration. Tears of sheer, hopeless exhaustion welled in her eyes. A car slowed down, its headlights sweeping over her. A high-end luxury car. She tensed, her hand going to the pepper spray on her keychain. The passenger window glided down. "It seems," said the low, smooth voice of Dom Rossi, "that you are determined to have bad luck." He was behind the wheel of a black Maserati, the engine purring so quietly she hadn't heard him approach. What are you doing here?" she stammered, baffled. "Driving home?" He lied, his charm effortless. "And I find you stranded. That tire is finished. Get in. I'll take you home." "I can't just leave my scooter." "We'll send someone for it. My auto club," he said, smiling faintly. "It's cold, Maya. Get in the car." She knew, on a deep, primal level, that this was a bad idea. He was connected to the men who had saved her. He had to be. He was the job offer. He was the $100 bills. He was mystery and danger. But she was also cold, stranded, and so very tired. And he was, inexplicably, the only person who had offered her any kind of safety. She got in the car. The interior was silent and smelled like rich, clean leather. It was warmer than her apartment. He didn't drive off immediately. He just looked at her. "You're shaking," he said. It's been a long night, a long week. The men in the rail yard, they didn't hurt you?" Her head snapped toward him. "How did you—" "That was you. Your men? My security team," he said, his voice hardening. "They were supposed to be watching, not engaging, but they made the right call. You're having me followed." It wasn't a question. She felt a cold dread mix with a strange, confusing spike of relief. "I'm having you protected," he corrected, his voice quiet. He put the car in gear and pulled smoothly into traffic. "There's a difference." "Why? Because I delivered your food? Because you feel sorry for me?" "No," he said, his eyes on the road. "I don't feel sorry for you. I admire you. You're strong, but the world you're moving in is not. You shouldn't be out there alone." They drove in silence for a few minutes. The city lights blurred past. "You offered me a job," she said, finally. "I did." "Why?" He glanced at her, his expression unreadable in the dashboard lights. "Because I wanted you somewhere safe, because your brother needs medical care, and because I wanted a reason to see you again that didn't involve me ordering sushi." The honesty of that last part hit her harder than a lie would have. "I don't date customers, Mr. Rossi." "Dom," he said, "and I'm not a customer tonight. I'm your ride." He pulled up outside her building. He didn't cut the engine. He turned to her, the charm replaced by something more serious. "The job offer stands, no strings. The insurance is real. Your brother would be covered. I have to think about it." "Think fast," he said, but not unkindly. "You can't protect him if you're dead in an alley." She flinched at the harshness of the truth. She got out of the car. "Thank you for the ride, Dom." "Good night, Maya." She watched him drive away, the Maserati's taillights disappearing. That night! She didn't dream of the muggers. She dreamed of him. She dreamed of the static shock feel of his hand, of the scent of leather, of the protective darkness in his eyes. She woke up, tangled in her sheets, her heart racing, angry at herself. She was drawn to him, to the safety he offered. But her instincts screamed that Dom Rossi was a beautiful, dangerous lie. Across town, Dominic looked at the file Marco had just given him. It was a complete workup on Maya Collins. Every job, every address, and her finances. The list of creditors was staggering. The red-stamped overdue notices from Brookmore General Hospital. "No hidden motives," Marco said. "No connections. She's not a plant. She's not working an angle. She's exactly what she looks like. Just poor and honest." Dominic closed the file. His respect for her deepened into something sharp and painful. She was drowning, and she had still refused his help. Twice. She had saved his life not for a reward, not for leverage, but because it was the right thing to do. That kind of purity didn't exist in his world. It was a liability. And it was the only thing he wanted. A week passed. Maya didn't call. Her scooter was returned, repaired by an anonymous service. She kept driving. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. She went to the pharmacy to pick up Eli's primary heart medication, the one he absolutely could not miss. "That'll be $418, the pharmacist said, not meeting her eyes. "What? No, the copay is $50, Maya said, her blood running cold. "Your secondary insurance lapsed, ma'am, at the first of the month. This is the uninsured price." $418. She had $63 in her bank account. I don't have it," she whispered, the humiliation burning her throat. Can you give me just a few pills? A 3-day supply? I'm sorry, Miss Collins. I can't break the prescription." She walked out of the pharmacy. Empty-handed, she got into her rattling old sedan. She sat there, the key in the ignition, and the full weight of her life, the debt, the exhaustion, the fear, and now this. Failing Eli. It all came crashing down. She put her head on the steering wheel and wept. It wasn't a quiet, dignified cry. It was a raw, silent, suffocating breakdown, her shoulders shaking in the cramped, cold car. A soft, hesitant tap came on the driver's side window. She looked up, her vision blurred, her face a mess. It was him, Dom. He was just standing there in the parking lot, in a dark wool coat, as if he'd been summoned by her despair. She fumbled with the window. rolling it down. "What do you want?" she choked out, her voice thick with tears and anger. He didn't answer. He just opened the car door. "Move over," he said, his voice impossibly gentle. "What? Move?" "To the passenger seat." She was too stunned, too exhausted to argue. She slid over the center console. He got in. Folding his large frame into the small, worn-out driver's seat, the car smelled like her, like stale coffee and stress. He filled it with his presence, with the scent of expensive cologne and cold night air. He didn't start the car. He didn't speak. He just reached into his coat and pulled out a clean, neatly folded dark gray handkerchief. He pressed it into her hand. She took it, and the simple, kind gesture broke the last of her control. She buried her face in the soft, expensive cloth and sobbed. He just sat there, his large hand resting on the back of her seat, not touching her, but there. He was a solid, warm presence in her collapsing world. When her sobs finally quieted into hiccuping breaths, he spoke, his voice a low rumble. "What do you need, Maya?" "I can't," she whispered into the handkerchief. "I can't do this anymore. My brother... his medicine. How much?" $400. I don't have it." He was silent for a moment. "I'll take care of it." "No," she said, pulling back, her pride stinging. "I don't want your money. I can't be in your debt." "This isn't a debt," he said, his voice firm, turning her face toward him. His thumb gently brushed a tear track from her cheek, the touch sending a shock through her. "This is a repayment. You helped someone. Once, now let someone help you." "I don't understand." "You don't have to." He took his phone out. He made a call. "Marco, Brookmore Pharmacy on Elm, the account for Eli Collins. Settle it, all of it, for the next year." He listened. "I don't care what it costs. Just do it." He hung up. "You can't just do that," she whispered, horrified and relieved. "I just did." He looked at her, his eyes full of a darkness and a sympathy she couldn't reconcile. "I'm not the man you think I am, Maya, but I am the man who is telling you. You are not alone in this." She wanted to refuse. She wanted to yell at him, but she was too tired, and the relief was too profound. "Why?" she asked, her voice small. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her for a long time, his gaze tracing her features as if memorizing them. "Because," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I think you might be the only real thing I've seen in 10 years. He leaned in, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't... He pressed his lips, not to her mouth, but to her forehead, a chaste, warm, fiercely protective kiss. "Go inside," he said, pulling back. "Get the medicine, I'll wait." She stared at him, then nodded, numb. She got out of the car, clutching his handkerchief, and walked back into the pharmacy, leaving him sitting in her broken-down car. A king on a pauper's throne. Maya had refused his job offer, but she had taken the medicine. It was a compromise that sat uneasily in her stomach. For a week, she worked, and for a week, there was no sign of Dom Rossi. The surveillance she had once felt as a prickle on her neck was gone, or at least she had convinced herself it was. She had enough money from her shifts to pay the electricity bill, and, for the first time in a year, Eli's medication was full on the shelf. The relief was so profound it made her feel guilty. She was finishing a delivery at a downtown office building, heading back to her scooter parked in the adjoining garage. It was late, just past 10 at night. She turned the corner of the concrete ramp and stopped. Her scooter was on its side. The seat was slashed open, stuffing spilling out like intestines. Both tires were flat, clearly punctured by a knife, and someone had spray-painted a crude, offensive word across the side panel. "No," she whispered. Her voice echoed in the empty garage. This was not bad luck. This was vandalism. This was malice. This was her transportation, her income, her legs. Without it, she was stranded. She couldn't work. She couldn't pay for the repairs, which would cost hundreds she didn't have. The small bubble of relief she had been living in burst, and the familiar, cold panic flooded her. She sank onto the greasy concrete curb, put her face in her hands, and refused to cry. She would not cry. A low, familiar purr echoed up the ramp. Headlights swept across the concrete, illuminating her ruined scooter. A black Maserati glided to a stop a few feet away. The driver's window went down. "I am beginning to think," Dominic Rossi said, his voice quiet but resonating in the garage, "that you are the unluckiest woman in Brookmore." Maya looked up, her face a mask of exhausted disbelief. "Are you kidding me? Are you just following me everywhere?" "I was in the building," he said, gesturing to the high-rise. "A late meeting." It was a plausible lie. "What happened? What does it look like?" she snapped, gesturing to the scooter. "Someone destroyed it." His face, which had been relaxed, hardened instantly. He got out of the car. He didn't just look at the scooter, he inspected it. He crouched, his expensive wool coat brushing the ground, and ran a finger along the spray paint. He looked at the flat tires. When he stood up, his eyes were cold. This wasn't random, Maya. This was a message. A message from who? "I don't know anyone. I owe everyone, but not people who do this." "Get in the car," he said. It was an order. "No, I'm calling the police. I have to file a report." "They won't do anything," Dominic said, his voice flat. "They'll take a statement, and you'll never hear from them again. This is private property damage. It's nothing to them." He opened the passenger door. "I'll take you home, and I will handle this." "Handle it? Like you handled my brother's medicine? Like you handled those muggers?" She was on her feet now, her voice rising. "Who are you, Dom? What gives you the right to just appear and handle things?" He met her gaze, his own unwavering. "Right now, I'm the man offering you a ride so you don't have to walk home from a parking garage at 10:30 at night. Get in, please." The please disarmed her. She was tired, she was angry, and she was, beneath it all, scared. She looked at her ruined scooter, her one small piece of independence, and felt the fight drain out of her. She got into the car. The leather seats enveloped her. The silence in the car was absolute as he pulled out of the garage and into the city traffic. "I haven't eaten," he said suddenly, not looking at her. "What?" "I had a meeting. It ran late. I'm hungry. And I'm guessing you are, too. Let me buy you dinner." "Dom, I can't, look at me." She gestured to her faded jeans and her thin Instafoodie jacket. "I can't go anywhere nice." "You can go where I'm taking you." He turned, not toward her apartment in the Heights, but toward the wealthy, candlelit streets of the old city. He pulled into a private alley, one she never would have noticed, and stopped before a simple, unmarked black door. A man in a dark suit materialized from the shadows, nodded to Dominic, and opened it. "Where are we?" she whispered, her resistance crumbling under the sheer strangeness of it all. "A place you don't need a reservation," he said. "Come on." The restaurant was called Il Corvo. It was small, maybe 10 tables, all draped in heavy white linen. It was dimly lit by real candles, and the air smelled of old wine and roasted garlic. There were only 2 other parties in the room, men in expensive suits who looked up when Dominic entered, nodded respectfully, and then immediately looked back at their plates. The owner, a short, balding man with a white apron, rushed over, his face wreathed in smiles. "Signor Rossi, it is an honor. Your table, of course." He led them not to one of the tables in the main room, but through a curtained archway into a small, private alcove. There was a single table set for 2, overlooking a tiny, walled-in garden. It was completely private. Dominic held her chair for her. Maya sat, feeling like she had fallen down a rabbit hole. "This is—" she started. "Quiet," he finished. "And the pasta is the best in the city. I've already ordered for us. I hope you like carbonara." He sat opposite her. The tension was palpable. He wasn't just a rich guy, the way the other men looked at him, the way the owner fawned over him. It was more than money. It was fear. It was respect. "Your scooter will be taken care of," he said, as a waiter poured them both water from a dark green bottle. "I'll have a new one delivered to your apartment tomorrow." "You can't do that." "I can, and I am." Let's not argue about it. Maya, just let me do this. Consider it a favor for a friend." The word friend hung in the air. Was that what they were? The food came, and it was, as he'd promised, incredible. And as she ate, the warmth of the food and the quiet safety of the room unknotted something inside her. He didn't press her. He didn't ask questions. He just watched her, his dark eyes attentive. And so, she talked. She talked about Eli, about his laugh, about his fear of needles, about how he was teaching himself to code on a second-hand laptop. She talked about her dreams, how she had wanted to be a graphic designer before her parents died, before Eli got sick. She talked about the crushing, relentless loneliness of her life, the feeling that she was a ghost, just moving through the city, invisible to everyone, responsible for everything. She hadn't realized she was crying, quietly, until he reached across the table and put his hand over hers. His hand was large, warm, and calloused. It was not the hand of a man who just had meetings. "You are not invisible, Maya," he said, his voice low and certain. "Not to me." He held her hand, his thumb stroking the back of it, and she let him. It was the first gentle, human touch she'd felt in years that wasn't from her brother. She pulled her hand back, wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry. I don't know why It's just... This is a lot. It's okay." A comfortable silence settled between them. She finally felt brave enough to ask, "So, what about you, Dom? You know, my entire pathetic life story. What do you do? I mean, really, you said meetings. Those men out there, they don't look at you like you're just a guy who has meetings." His expression closed, just slightly. The warmth was shuttered, replaced by a careful, neutral mask. "I run a logistics company," he said. The lie was smooth, practiced. "We import and export goods, mostly from Italy and the Mediterranean. It's complicated. It requires a lot of negotiation, a lot of difficult personalities." She watched him. She knew, with absolute certainty, that he was lying, or at least telling her a tiny polished fraction of the truth. A logistics company. That's what people in movies said when they meant something else. But she also knew, looking at the hard set of his jaw, that to press him would be to hit a wall, and she was too tired, too grateful for the dinner, to fight him. "Right," she said, looking down at her plate. "Logistics sounds demanding." "It is," he said. And they left it at that. He drove her back, not to her apartment, but to the luxury high-rise where she had first met him. "Why are we here?" she asked, as they rode the silent, high-speed elevator. "I need to pick something up from my apartment, Mun," he said, "and I don't want the night to end yet." She knew she should say no. She knew she should ask him to take her home to Eli, but she didn't. The pull toward him, this strange, dangerous, protective man, was stronger than her common sense. His penthouse was dark, lit only by the vast wall of windows overlooking the Brookmore skyline. The city lights glittered below them like a carpet of fallen stars. He didn't turn on the lights. He walked to the window, and she followed. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I used to think so," he said, standing beside her, but looking at her, not the view. "Now I just see it as a collection of problems." She could feel the heat radiating from his body. He was so close. The air between them was thick, charged, all the unspoken things, his secrets, her gratitude, his protection, her fear. It all coalesced into a heavy, electric tension. "Dom," she started, though she didn't know what she was going to say. "Maya," he breathed. He touched her face, his calloused thumb tracing her cheekbone. She leaned into the touch. Her eyes fluttering closed. It was a surrender. "You have no idea," he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't name. "What you did—" He didn't finish. He leaned in, slowly, his gaze dropping to her mouth. She met him halfway. Their first kiss was not a gentle exploration. It was a collision of desperation and unspoken longing. It was slow and deep and intense. His lips were firm and hot, and he tasted faintly of wine and a darker, metallic something that was just him. He put his other hand on her waist, pulling her flush against him. She wasn't a stranger he was protecting. She was a woman he wanted. She could feel the hard muscle of his chest, the thud of his heart. Or maybe it was hers. She wrapped her arms around his neck, her fingers tangling in his thick, dark hair. It was a kiss that spoke of loneliness, his and hers. It was a kiss that built, growing hotter, needier. He moved his mouth from hers, pressing kisses along her jaw, down her neck, finding the pulse point that hammered there. She gasped, her head falling back. It was too much. It was too fast. "Dom," she breathed, her hands pressing against his chest. "Wait." He stopped. Instantly, he pulled back, his breathing ragged. His eyes were dark, almost black with desire, but he respected her boundary. He rested his forehead against hers, his hands still gripping her waist, as if afraid she might dissolve. "I'm sorry," he rasped. "No, it's just—" She was trembling. I don't know what this is. I don't know who you are." The confusion was plain on her face. She felt safer in his arms than she had in years, and yet every instinct was screaming that he was dangerous. He stepped back, putting a cold inch of air between them, and she immediately missed his warmth. "You should go," he said, his voice flat, all the passion gone. "Dom, I'll have my driver take you home. The car is waiting downstairs." He was already walking away, grabbing his phone, his back to her. He was all business again. The wall was back up. She felt dismissed and confused and oddly hurt. "Good night, Dom," she said to his back. He didn't turn around. "Good night, Maya." She left, her heart hammering, the taste of him still on her lips. She felt safe. She felt confused. She felt, more than anything, alive. The moment the elevator doors closed, Dominic swept the highball glass from his bar, sending it shattering against the far wall. The rage he had been holding in all night, from the sight of her vandalized scooter, from the lie he'd had to tell, from the desire he had barely controlled, came roaring to the surface. Leonardo, his betrayer, and the Silva family. They were escalating. The attack on the scooter was a message to him. They had found her. They knew she was his weakness. Marco entered the penthouse without knocking. "She's on her way home. The driver has her, and the new scooter is at her building. They're getting sloppy," Dominic snarled. "Or they're getting brave, slashing her tires. They're sending me a message. They know I'm protecting her." Leonardo was spotted at a safe house in the old Canning district, Marco said, his face grim. "The Silvas are protecting him. They're moving him tonight." "Good." Dominic walked to his desk and unlocked a drawer. He pulled out a sleek, heavy, black pistol, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. "Set the meeting, now." "Boss, you're not I am. This isn't business anymore." "Marco, they touched her. They put their hands on a civilian." His voice was pure ice. "This dual life. It's over. Tonight, they see the man she saved." The meeting took place in the cold, cavernous belly of the Canning district. It was not a negotiation. Dominic, flanked by Marco and 3 of his deadliest men, met the Silva contingent. Leonardo, his traitorous cousin, was there, looking pale and terrified. The confrontation was brutal and blessedly fast. It was not a firefight, it was an execution. When it was over, Leonardo and the 2 Silva captains were on the wet concrete, and Dominic had not a drop of blood on his suit. He had delivered his answer 2 days later. Maya was replacing the help wanted sign in the window of the diner where she'd picked up a second job, washing dishes. Her new scooter, a gleaming red Vespa, was parked outside. Dom had been true to his word. She hadn't heard from him since that night. 2 men in cheap suits walked in. They were not customers. They flashed badges. "Maya Collins?" the older one asked. "Yes?" "We're Detectives Miller and Shaw, Brookmore PD. We need you to come down to the station, just to answer a few questions." Her blood ran cold. "Questions? About what?" "Your name came up during an ongoing investigation, a surveillance log from the area around the Salty Gull Diner, about a month back, the night of the 18th. The night she saved Dominic, the night she was never there. I had a flat tire that night. She lied, her voice shaking. That's what we hear, Miller said, his eyes flat. But a witness put your car there. Just be easier if you came with us, voluntarily. At the station, they put her in a small, gray room. They asked her what she saw, who she was with, why she was in that alley. She stuck to her story. Flat tire. Didn't see anything. She was there for 3 hours. They didn't threaten her, but they didn't believe her. Finally, just as she was sure they were going to arrest her for lying, a different, higher-ranking officer came in. Miss Collins? You're free to go. We apologize for the inconvenience. That's it. We received clarification from another source. Your presence at the location was deemed coincidental. Have a good day. She walked out into the afternoon sun, dazed and terrified. Dominic found her an hour later. She was sitting in a park, just staring at the ducks. His Maserati pulled up to the curb. He got out and sat on the bench next to her, leaving a respectable foot of space between them. You were at the police station, he said. It wasn't a question. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a new, dawning fear. They just let me go. They knew I was there. Dom. That night. How did you... I have friends, he said, his voice quiet. I run a logistics company, remember? We have connections at the port, with the city. I heard they had brought in a civilian. I made a call. I clarified that you were not involved. You clarified. She repeated the word, and it tasted like acid. You pulled strings. I protected you. He turned to her, his face grim. Maya, you need to listen to me. This city, it's more complicated than you know. The people who vandalized your scooter, they are not good people. They are my business rivals. Rivals? In the logistics business? She asked, her voice laced with sarcasm. Yes, he said, his gaze hard. And they are dangerous. You need to be careful. You need to stay away from the docks. You need to call me if you see anything suspicious. Do you understand? He was warning her, but he was still lying. He was a man who could make police investigations disappear. He was a man who had rivals, who slashed scooter tires and, she suspected, much, much worse. Who are you? She whispered. What kind of man are you? Dom? I'm the man who is trying to keep you safe, he said. He stood up, looming over her. Go home, Maya. Lock your doors and take the job I offered you. It's the only way I can protect you. He got back in his car and drove away, leaving her on the bench, more confused and more terrified than she had ever been. She had kissed this man. She had let him into her life, and she was beginning to realize that Dom Rossi was a mask, and the man underneath was someone truly powerful and truly dangerous. Maya avoided him. For 4 days, she screened his calls, the name Dom Rossi flashing on her phone with a menace that made her stomach clench. She took different, longer routes to her dishwashing job. She stopped using the InstaFoodie app, telling them her scooter was in the shop, and instead picked up extra cash-only shifts at the diner. She was a mouse, hiding from an eagle. Aware that the eagle owned the entire sky, the police incident had terrified her. His ability to make it disappear had terrified her more. The kiss they shared felt like a memory from a different life, a dangerous, foolish dream. Now, there was only the cold reality. He was a man of connections and rivals, and she was a loose thread he had pulled, one that could unravel her entire, fragile life. On the 5th day, he was waiting for her. She finished her shift at the diner, just after the lunch rush, her hands raw from hot water and bleach. She walked out the back entrance into the alley, and he was there. Not in his Maserati, but leaning against the brick wall, dressed in dark jeans and a simple black jacket. He looked less like a penthouse owner and more like the shadows he commanded. Next to him, gleaming, was her original scooter. Not the new red Vespa he had given her, but her old, battered one, now magically pristine. The slash seat was reupholstered, the spray paint was gone, the panel buffed to a shine. The tires were new. You're a hard woman to find, he said. His voice was quiet, lacking its usual smooth charm. He seemed tired. I've been busy. she said, her keys clutched in her pocket. She didn't move toward him. "What is this?" "This," he said, gesturing to the scooter, "is an apology. I brought your original one back. I figured. It was yours. The other one was just a loaner." He pushed a set of keys toward her. "The men who did this, they were sending a message to me. You were just the messenger. And for that, I am sorry, more than you know." She stared at the scooter, then at him. "An apology. Dom, you had me questioned by police, or you had me released by them. I don't know which is worse. Your rivals are destroying my property. You lied to me." "I did," he admitted. He took a step toward her, but stopped when she flinched. "I am not who I pretended to be. Maya, not entirely. Who are you then? A logistics guy with friends in high places and enemies in alleys. My family, we have a business," he said, searching for words. "It's old, it's complicated, and it's dangerous. I never ever wanted to bring this danger to you. I just wanted to—" "What? See the simple poor girl who saved you?" "No," he said, his voice dropping, his intensity sudden and fierce. "I just wanted to be near you. I wanted to protect you. After what you did, you're the one good thing that's happened to me in a very long time, and I contaminated it. I put you at risk. I'm sorry." He seemed genuine. The care in his eyes, the raw frustration in his voice, it felt real. And that was the problem. Her fear was at war with the undeniable pull she felt toward him. He was the only person who had ever made her feel protected, and he was the source of the danger itself. "I have to go," she said, her voice shaking. I can't. Just leave me alone. Dom, please. My life is hard enough. I don't need whatever this is." She left the repaired scooter, turning her back on him and it, and walked the 30 blocks home. She was crying by the time she reached her apartment building. Hot, angry tears of frustration. She just wanted her small, difficult, normal life back. Well, if it isn't little Maya Collins, all grown up and crying in the street. The voice hit her like a punch to the gut. It was a voice she had spent 6 years trying to forget. She turned. Tyler. He looked older, but not better. His thin frame was strung with a wiry, nervous energy. His eyes were bloodshot, his face gaunt. He was the living embodiment of her worst mistakes. "Tyler," she whispered, her blood running cold. "What are you doing here? What, no hello? No great to see you?" He gave her a gap-toothed, desperate grin. "I heard you were back in Brookmore, playing house with a sick kid. I figured I'd look up my old girl. I'm not your girl. Not for a long time. You need to leave." She tried to push past him, but he blocked the door to her building. "Whoa, not so fast. See, I'm in a little bit of a jam," he said, his voice losing its fake cheer. "I owe some people, a lot of money, and I was thinking, you've always been resourceful, and you've got a secret. We've got a secret." She froze. "I don't know what you were talking about." "Oh, come on. The DUI? The one your parents' lawyer got reduced to reckless driving? And what about that shoplifting charge? The one that just disappeared? You were a minor, but those records aren't gone. Not really. Not if someone knows where to look." Her stomach twisted. "What do you want? Tyler?" $5,000, he hissed. "By Friday. Or I start thinking, maybe Child Protective Services would be interested in Eli's guardian. An ex-drunk driver, a thief? They'd love that. I bet they'd take that kid from you in a heartbeat." You wouldn't," she breathed, the threat sucking the air from her lungs. 5,000 Friday, or we find out." He leaned in, his breath sour. "It's good to see you, Maya." He sauntered away, whistling, leaving her shaking so badly she could barely fit her key in the lock. Dominic sat in his penthouse, watching the high-definition, time-stamped footage on his monitor. He had known about Tyler. He'd known about the DUI and the shoplifting charge. They were in the extensive file he had on her. He had dismissed Tyler as a past threat, a loser who had drifted out of her life. He had been wrong. He watched the grainy video, filmed from the surveillance car parked across the street. He saw Maya's face, pale with terror. He saw Tyler's greasy, triumphant smile. He heard the entire exchange, the audio feed crisp and clear. He watched as Maya finally fumbled her way into her building. He watched Tyler walk away. He pressed a button on his intercom. Marco. The big man entered the room, his face impassive. Boss, the ex-boyfriend, Tyler, what's his last name? Hayden, Marco supplied. He's staying at a flop house on the east side. He owes the Silva family's bookie around $8,000. Of course he does, Dominic said, his voice dangerously quiet. He just threatened Maya. He tried to extort her for $5,000, threatening to expose her past to CPS. Marco's expression didn't change, but a muscle in his jaw twitched. I'm going to pay him a visit, Dominic said, standing up. Boss, let me handle it. It's beneath you. This one, Dominic said, shrugging on his coat, is not business, it's personal. Tyler was in a dark, smoky bar, celebrating his expected windfall with a glass of cheap whiskey. He felt a presence and looked up. A very large, very well-dressed man was standing by his table. Another, even larger, was blocking the exit. Tyler Hayden, Dominic said. It was not a question. Who's asking? Dominic sat down, uninvited. The entire bar seemed to go silent, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. My name is not important. What is important, Dominic said, leaning forward, is that you just made the single biggest mistake of your life. Tyler laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. I don't know what you're talking about, pal. You spoke to Maya Collins today. You threatened her. You tried to extort her. Dominic placed his hands on the table. They were clean, manicured, steady. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to finish your drink. You are going to walk out of this bar. You are going to get on the first bus out of this city, and you are never going to return. Yeah? And who are you to tell me? Dominic's voice dropped to a whisper, a cold, precise sound that cut through the bar's noise. I am the man who owns the people you owe money to. I am the man who, with a single phone call, can have every bone in your body broken before midnight, but I'm not going to do that. He leaned in closer. I'm not going to do that because I don't want Maya to ever have to think about you again. I don't want her to read about you in the paper. I want you to vanish. If you ever contact her, text her, email her, or even think her name again, you will simply cease to be. Do you understand me? Tyler was pale, sweating. He had seen predators in his life, but this was something else. This was a man who didn't make threats. He stated facts. Yeah, man, I get it. I was just kidding around. You will forget her name, Dominic said, his eyes black and empty. You will forget her brother's name. You will forget the city of Brookmore. Now, get out. Tyler scrambled from the booth, knocking over his drink, and all but ran from the bar. Dominic sat there for a moment. He signaled the bartender. A bottle of your best scotch, and, he said, pulling a thick wad of cash from his money clip. This should cover his troubles and everyone else's for the inconvenience. He walked out, leaving the bar in stunned, wealthy silence. Friday came and went. There was no call from Tyler, no text. He had vanished. Maya knew, with a certainty that made her sick, that Dominic was responsible. She found him. She went to the diner, used their payphone, and called the number he had used. He answered on the first ring. Where are you? She demanded. He told her. The penthouse. She took a bus, her hands shaking with a cold rage. She was buzzed up without a word. He was waiting for her, the city lights glittering behind him. Maya, I'm glad you... What did you do to him? She cut him off, her voice vibrating. He didn't pretend not to understand. Tyler? Don't play dumb. He's gone. He was threatening me. And now he's gone. What did you do to him? Did you kill him? No, Dominic said calmly. I did not kill him. I would never do that. He paused. But I did. Handle it. I had a conversation with him. I explained in no uncertain terms that he was to leave you and your brother alone, permanently. You explained, just like you clarified with the police, just like your rivals sent a message with my scooter. She was pacing, her fear making her brave. "Who are you? What gives you the right to interfere in my life, to threaten people, to make them disappear?" "He threatened you. Maya, he threatened Eli. Was I supposed to do nothing? You were supposed to stay away. I told you to stay away. I am not your project. I am not your property to protect. That's not what this is," he yelled, his own control finally snapping. He took a step toward her, his face a mask of anguish and fury. "Don't you get it? This is the only way I know how. The only way I know how to keep someone safe." "Safe? By doing what? By being who? Tell me. No more lies about logistics. Tell me the truth." He stared at her, his chest rising and falling. The silence stretched, filled only by their ragged breathing. "You don't want to know the truth," he said, his voice low. "I do. I deserve it. After everything you've dragged me into, I deserve the truth." He turned away from her, walking to the window. He looked down at the city for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, dead. "My name is Dominic Moretti. My family. We don't import goods. We run this city, the unions, the port, the construction, and the gambling, the things people don't talk about. My business isn't logistics. Maya, it's organized crime." She just stood there. The words organized crime hung in the air, seeming to suck all the oxygen from the room. A mafia. He was a mob boss, the man she had kissed, the man who had saved her, the man whose blood she had in her veins. No, the man who had her blood. You're in the Mafia," she whispered. The word felt stupid, like something from a movie. "Yes," he said, turning to face her. His eyes were bleak. "I am. Now you know." She felt a strange, cold calm settle over her. It was the shock. She looked at his hands, the ones that had held hers, the ones that had touched her face. She thought about the men at the rail yard. She thought about the violence that seemed to follow him like a shadow. "The man in the alley," she said, her voice numb. The one I gave blood to. That was you, wasn't it?" His silence was her answer. "Oh, God." She backed away, stumbling over a rug. You were shot by your rivals." "By a traitor," he said, his voice hard. "And the Silvas." She shook her head, tears of horror and a bizarre, awful clarity filling her eyes. "I have to go. I can't. Maya, wait." He moved toward her, his hands up, as if approaching a spooked animal. "No," she screamed. "Don't touch me. Stay away from me. Stay away from Eli. I mean it. Dominic, you are poison. Everything you touch, you destroy. Stay away from us." She turned and ran, fumbling with the elevator button. She didn't look back. She left him standing alone in his glass tower, the truth finally, terribly, between them. For 3 days, Maya lived in a fog of pure terror. She quit the diner. She kept Eli home from school, telling him it was a precaution, that his cough sounded bad. She unplugged her phone. Every person who walked past her window was a threat. Every car that slowed down was an enemy. She was running out of money. She had to work. She couldn't hide forever. On the 4th day, she reactivated her Insta-Foodie account. She had to pay the rent. She told Eli to lock the doors, all 3 of them, and not to open them for anyone. She was across town, dropping off a bag of tacos, when her new phone, a cheap burner she'd bought, vibrated. It was a number she didn't recognize. Her neighbor. "Maya, you need to come home. It's Eli. Oh, God, Maya, there's an ambulance." She didn't remember the drive. She ran red lights, her scooter weaving through traffic, a single high-pitched wail of no, no, no tearing from her throat. She saw the lights, the police car, the ambulance. Her apartment door was shattered, the frame splintered. She abandoned the scooter and sprinted up the stairs. Paramedics were strapping Eli to a gurney. His face was a swollen, purple mask. His arm was bent at a sickening, unnatural angle. "Eli! Oh my God, baby, who did this?" He was conscious, barely. He whimpered, his eyes fluttering open. He saw her, and his lip trembled. "Maya," he whispered, his voice thick and broken. I locked the door. I did. They kicked it in." Who? Eli?" she begged, her hand on his uninjured cheek. "2 men," he cried, tears leaking from his swollen eyes. They were looking for money. They hit me." He choked on a sob, his small body shaking. "And Maya, they said a name." "What name? Baby? What did they say?" He looked at her, his eyes wide with a terror that would haunt her forever. They said, 'This is a message for your sister. Tell her the Silvas said hello.'" The world tilted. This was it. This was the contamination. This was the poison. Her fault, her connection, her blood. She rode in the ambulance, holding Eli's hand, her mind completely, terrifyingly blank. At the hospital, they rushed him into trauma, a broken arm, a mild concussion, 3 cracked ribs. She sat in the waiting room, covered in his blood, her body rigid. A nurse came out. "He's stable. The doctor will be out soon. You can—" "No." The voice came from behind her. Maya turned. Dominic Moretti was standing there. Not Dom Rossi. He was flanked by Marco and 2 other men in dark, severe suits. His face was not sad. It was not apologetic. It was a mask of such cold, absolute fury that she almost didn't recognize him. He looked like a killer. "You," she whispered, her voice dead. "You did this." "I didn't," he said, his voice a low growl of controlled rage. "But I am going to finish it. Where is he?" "Get out," she said. I told you to stay away from us. This is your fault, your world, your rivals." "Yes, it is," he said, walking past her, toward the nurse. "I don't care about your anger right now. Maya, I care about him. Where is he?" "Sir, this is family only," the nurse said, stepping in his path. "I am family," he snarled. Marco stepped forward and spoke quietly to the nurse, who suddenly went pale and stepped aside. Dominic walked into Eli's room. Maya followed, her legs numb. Eli was sleeping, an IV in his good arm. Dominic just stood over the bed, looking at the boy's bruised face. The silence in the room was heavy, violent. "They will pay for this," he whispered. It was not a promise. It was a vow. "I don't want your revenge," Maya wept, her voice breaking. "I want my brother to be safe. I want you to go." He turned to her. The rage in his eyes was banked, replaced by a grim, terrible certainty. "I am never going again. You told me to stay away. I listened, and this," he gestured to Eli, "is what happened. This ends now. I am moving you, both of you, to a secure location. You will be under my protection, whether you like it or not. I won't be your prisoner." "You can be my prisoner," he said, stepping toward her until he loomed over her. "Or you can be their target. Those are the choices. Your brother will not be hurt again. I swear on my mother's grave, this will never happen again." He looked at her, at the blood on her shirt, at the hollow terror in her eyes. The anger in his face softened, just for a second, into something that looked like unbearable pain. He reached out, not to hold her, not to comfort her. He simply leaned in and pressed his lips to her forehead, a hard, possessive kiss that felt nothing like their first. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a brand, a seal, a promise of righteous, terrible violence. "I will handle this," he said against her skin, "and then I will come for you." He pulled back. Maya just stood there, cold and afraid. The wall between them was higher than ever, but it was no longer hers. He had built it, and he was on the other side, guarding it. And she knew, with a dreadful certainty, that he was the only thing standing between her and the monsters his life had created. Eli was home. That was the only thought that mattered. He was home, his arm in a vibrant blue cast, one he had picked himself, and his face a constellation of fading yellow and purple bruises. He was quiet, but he was alive. Their apartment, however, was no longer a home. It was a crime scene. The shattered doorframe was a constant, gaping reminder of their vulnerability. Maya had barricaded it with a heavy dresser, but it was a child's defense against monsters. She was in the kitchen, boiling water for tea, when she saw it, an envelope. It had been slipped under the door, past the dresser, and was lying innocuously on the cracked linoleum. It was not there an hour ago. Her blood went cold. It was a simple, white envelope. Her name was not on it. With a trembling hand, she picked it up. It was heavy, too heavy. She tore it open, her fingers fumbling. Something hard and metallic fell into her palm. Shockingly cold, a single, brass-case bullet. Tucked inside the envelope was a small, neatly folded piece of paper. She unfolded it. 5 words were printed in stark, block letters. Your blood is still his. She dropped the bullet. It hit the floor with a loud clack and rolled, spinning before coming to a stop by the refrigerator. She backed away, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. They knew. They knew about the blood. They knew it was her. They had touched her brother, and now they were telling her, in the clearest language possible, that she was next. She was scrambling, her mind blank with panic, trying to drag the dresser away, needing to grab Eli, to run, to go somewhere, when her burner phone, the one Dominic had given her, rang. She snatched it up. "Hello? Don't touch the door." Dominic's voice was not a voice. It was a razor. The note, the bullet. "Did you touch them?" "Yes, I dropped the bullet." "It doesn't matter. They've been watching. They know you got it. I'm downstairs. Marco is on your landing. Pack 1 bag, for you and for Eli. Whatever you need for 2 days. You have 5 minutes. Move." The line went dead. She didn't question it. The absolute, terrifying certainty in his voice mirrored the panic in her own heart. She ran to Eli's room. He was asleep, his medication finally giving him peace. "Eli, honey, wake up. We have to go." She stuffed his clothes, her few valuables, a picture of her parents, and Eli's medications into a single backpack. She pulled her brother, dazed and whimpering, into his shoes. She dragged the dresser just far enough, unlatched the 3 locks she had installed, and opened the door. Marco was there. He was not just a bodyguard, he was a wall. He said nothing. He simply scooped the groggy Eli into his arms, as gently as a father, and turned. "This way, Miss Collins." She followed them down the back stairs, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. A black armored sport utility vehicle was idling in the alley. Marco put Eli in the back seat and then stood by the door. A silent sentinel. Dominic got out of the driver's side. He was not in a suit. He was dressed in dark, functional clothes, and his face was carved from granite. "Get in," he said. She got in. He pulled away before her door was even fully closed. They drove in silence, leaving the city, the familiar lights of Brookmore fading into the dark countryside. Eli had fallen back asleep, his head resting on her lap. She stroked his hair, her body rigid with fury and a humiliating, profound sense of dependence. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her voice sounding small in the vast, quiet car. "Somewhere safe, a house, my family's, a prison." He glanced at her, his eyes unreadable in the dark. "For the Silvas? Yes, it's a fortress. For you, it's the only place on earth they can't touch you. You can hate me for it, Maya, but you'll be alive to hate me." She looked away, out the window, at the dark trees rushing past. "You said you would handle it. This is not handled. Dominic, this is worse. They know about the blood. How could they know that?" "Leonardo," he said, his voice laced with venom. "My cousin, the one who betrayed me. He must have been at the clinic. He must have seen you. He sold you to the Silvas. It's the only way." They arrived. After nearly an hour, at a pair of massive wrought iron gates, they swung open without a sound. They drove up a long, winding drive, surrounded by deep woods. The house was not a house. It was an estate. A sprawling stone mansion, dark and imposing, perched on a hill overlooking a private lake. Men were visible. They were walking the perimeter, dressed in dark uniforms, not as bodyguards, but as soldiers. "You will be safe here," he said again, killing the engine. "My best men are here. Nothing gets in, and nothing," he added, his gaze heavy, "gets out." She was a prisoner, a high-value asset in a gilded cage. She resented the lack of control, the fact that her life, and Eli's, now depended entirely on the man who had brought this storm to their door. For 3 days, they lived in the eye of the hurricane. Eli, separated from the trauma, healed with the resilience of youth, he was fascinated by the place. There was a movie theater, a kitchen staff that made him anything he wanted, and an internet connection faster than he had ever dreamed of. Maya, however, paced. She paced the vast, antique-filled rooms, feeling the weight of the guards' eyes on her. Dominic was there. He was in a different wing, in a large study that he had converted into a war room. She heard the low rumble of his voice, the constant quiet presence of Marco. He was hunting. He was preparing. She was living in a beautiful, terrifying limbo. On the fourth night, she couldn't sleep. The silence of the estate was louder than the city had ever been. She was terrified. She was angry. And worst of all, she was desperately, achingly lonely. She got up, pulling a silk robe she'd found in the closet over her thin pajamas. She walked through the dark, cavernous hallways, her bare feet silent on the cold marble floors. She followed the only light. It came from the study. The door was ajar. He was in there. Not on the phone, not in a meeting. He was standing in front of a massive, unlit fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring into the empty hearth. He looked broken. The weight of his world, the violence he was planning, it was all there in the exhausted slump of his shoulders. He heard her. He didn't turn, but his whole body tensed. "You should be in bed," he said. "I can't sleep," she whispered, stepping into the room. "I can't live like this." Waiting for the next bullet, the next attack. "It's coming," he said, his voice rough. "They're not going to stop, which means I have to stop them." He finally turned, his eyes dark pits in the dim light. "This ends soon. And what if it ends you?" The question was out before she could stop it. It hung in the air between them. He walked toward her, setting the glass down. He stopped a foot away. "Is that what you're afraid of?" "I'm afraid of everything," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I'm afraid for Eli. I'm afraid of your men outside. I'm afraid of the Silvas. And I'm afraid of you." "Good," he rasped. "You should be." "But I'm not," she whispered, looking up at him. "Not really." This, she realized, was the man she had saved in the alley. Not the mob boss, not the killer, but the man who was bleeding out, the man whose life was inexplicably tied to hers. "I'm so tired," she said, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I'm so tired of being strong. I'm so tired of being afraid." The wall he had built around himself, the cold, furious control, seemed to crack. He saw her, not as a liability, not as a target, but as the one person who had seen him at his weakest and had not turned away. He reached out, his hand shaking, and brushed the tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You are the strongest person I have ever known, Maya." The touch was her undoing, the dam of her fear, her anger, her loneliness. It all broke. She didn't sob. She just deflated, leaning her forehead against his chest, her hands clutching the front of his shirt. He froze for a second, shocked by the surrender. Then his arms came around her, pulling her against him, burying his face in her hair. He held her, his grip desperate, as if she were the only solid thing in his collapsing world. "I am so sorry, Mia Cara," he whispered into her hair. "I am so sorry I brought this to you." She didn't answer. She just held on. They stood like that for a long time, two broken people holding each other up on the precipice. He pulled back, his hands framing her face. He looked at her, his gaze raw, full of a vulnerability that matched her own. It was more intimate than any touch. "You should go back to bed," he said, his voice thick. "I don't want to be alone," she confessed. His eyes searched hers, and in them she saw a new question, a new, tender ache. He was not the confident, charming Dom Rossi. He was not the cold, furious Dominic Moretti. He was just a man, asking for permission. She leaned in and kissed him. It was a kiss of raw, emotional honesty. It wasn't about passion, not yet. It was about connection. It was a silent, desperate, "I see you," he responded, his mouth moving against hers, a groan of pure, unadulterated longing vibrating in his chest. He lifted her, his arms steel, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, her hands tangling in his hair. never breaking the kiss. He carried her from the study, through the dark halls, to his bedroom. It was a vast, Spartan room, dominated by a large bed. He laid her down gently, as if she were made of glass. He pulled back, his chest heaving, and looked at her. "Maya," he said, his voice a rasp, "if we do this, there's no going back, for either of us." "I know," she said, her voice clear, certain. "I'm tired of running." He nodded. A sharp, single movement. He was the one who was vulnerable now, the one who was exposed. His reverence was a tangible thing. He didn't rip her clothes off. He unbuttoned the pajama top, his calloused fingers clumsy, trembling slightly. He kissed the hollow of her throat, her collarbone, the curve of her shoulder, as if worshipping at an altar. He slid the robe from her shoulders. His eyes were dark, full of a tenderness that made her ache. He showed reverence for every part of her, the woman who had lived a hard life, the woman who had given him her blood. He touched the faint, fading bruise on her arm from Eli's attack, his expression turning dark for a moment, before he pressed a gentle kiss to it, as if to heal it. At each step, his eyes asked for consent, and at each step, she gave it. She was not his prisoner in this. She was his partner. She was, in this moment, his equal. Their intimacy was tender and slow and emotionally raw. It was a desperate, quiet collision of two worlds. It was a frantic search for peace in the middle of a war. It was the only way they knew how to say the things they couldn't say. "I'm terrified. I'm in love. Stay with me. Don't die. Afterward." She lay in his arms, the enormity of what she had done, of who she had given herself to, crashing down on her. A silent sob escaped her. She was in love with a monster, a man who was going to war, a man who might not come back, a man who might come back with more blood on his hands. She wept silently, overwhelmed by fear and a love so profound it terrified her. He didn't speak. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just held her. He pulled the covers over her, held her tightly against his warm, solid body, and did not let go. He held her through the night, a silent, unmoving guardian against the dark, both inside and out. The next morning, the spell was broken. The house was humming with a new, sharp-edged energy. Maya woke up alone in his bed. She found him in the study. He was dressed in black. Marco and two other men were with him, rolling up maps. He was giving orders, his voice crisp, cold, and final. He was the Dawn again. He saw her and motioned for his men to leave. They filed out, their eyes respectfully averted. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. "It's tonight," he said. "The Silvas. We've found them. We're ending this." "You're ending it? Or you're ending them? Does it matter so long as you and Eli are safe?" he said, his face hard. "It matters to me," she yelled, her voice breaking. "It matters. You don't get to do this. You don't get to make me feel this, and then go get yourself killed." He walked to her, grabbing her by the arms. His grip was hard, desperate. "Listen to me. This is the only way. This is the world I live in. I have to do this. I have to finish this, so they can never use you against me again. And if they kill you, what then? What happens to us, Dominic? Are we just collateral damage? I will return," he said, his voice a low, fierce promise. He pulled her to him, his mouth crashing down on hers. Their goodbye kiss was desperate. It was slow. It was full of the unspoken truths of the night before. It was a kiss of ownership, of fear, of desperation, and of a deep, profound, and terrible love. It was a kiss that tasted like a final goodbye. He pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay inside. Do not, under any circumstances, leave this house. Marco's best men are here. They will protect you." "I don't want them," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I want you. Please, don't go. I have to." He kissed her one last time, hard. "I will return." He turned and walked away. He didn't look back. She watched him, followed by Marco and a small army of shadows, get into a black car and drive away, disappearing into the dark woods. She was alone. She sank into his chair in the study, the leather still warm from him. She felt hollow. Empty? Her hand brushed against a drawer that was slightly ajar. She opened it, idly, needing to touch something. Anything that was his. It was empty. Save for a single, folded piece of expensive cream-colored stationery. It was a letter. The date, in the corner, was from a month ago, the day after she had saved his life. Before he had ever spoken to her, she unfolded it. The handwriting was strong, clean and elegant. I do not know your name. I do not know why you were there. I am a man who does not believe in angels, but I know that you saved my life. I was gone, and you pulled me back. I woke up with your blood in my veins, and I feel different, cleaner. I will find you, not to harm you, but to thank you, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring the sacrifice you made for a stranger in an alley. I will not let it be in vain. Thank you, Dominic Moretti. She clutched the letter to her chest, her sobs echoing in the great, empty room. It wasn't Dom Rossi. It was Dominic, the man she had saved, the man she had just sent to war, the man she loved, and he had, in his own dark way, been honoring her from the very beginning. The warehouse district was a dead zone, a place of rust and shadows. Dominic's ambush was not a quiet execution, it was a trap. The Silvas had been waiting. They knew he was coming. The night exploded. It was not a firefight of clean shots, but a brutal, close-quarters war. Dominic moved through the chaos not as a man, but as a force of pure, cold rage. He was not the calculating Don. He was the man avenging the bruises on Eli's face, the terror in Maya's eyes. He saw him, Antonio Silva, the man who had ordered the hit on his family, the man who had ordered the attack on a 17-year-old boy. Silva was trying to flee, to get to an armored car. Dominic intercepted him, tackling him to the wet pavement. They rolled, two kings of a dark, bloody underworld, reduced to snarling, punching animals. Silva was strong, but Dominic was fueled by a righteous, white-hot fury. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to end it. The fight was short, ugly, and decisive. When Dominic stood up, breathing in ragged, painful gasps, Antonio Silva did not. He turned, tasting blood, his own, just in time to see one of Silva's remaining men raise a shotgun. He felt the impact before he heard the blast, a searing, white-hot agony that ripped through his side in the exact same place he had been shot a month ago. He fell to his knees, his vision tunneling. He heard Marco shout his name, a sound of pure panic. He heard more shots, and then, finally, the overwhelming, deafening wail of sirens. Someone had called the cops, the Silvas. They had planned to have him arrested if they couldn't kill him. He saw Marco running toward him, trying to drag him away, but Dominic shook his head. No, get out, go. Protect her. Boss, I'm not— Go, Dominic roared, a bloody cough erupting from his chest. That's an order, Marco. She's all that matters. He collapsed onto the pavement as the first blue and red lights washed over the alley. The letter he had written to Maya clutched in his pocket. A silent promise. At the estate, Maya was watching the news. She hadn't slept. She and Eli were in the grand library. The television volume turned low. A breaking news alert flashed across the screen. We're coming to you live from the Brookmore Warehouse District, a reporter said, her voice high with excitement, where a violent confrontation has left multiple individuals dead. Sources are calling this the bloodiest mafia conflict the city has seen in over a decade. The camera panned over a chaotic scene, body bags, police tape, and then a gurney. A man was being loaded into an ambulance. He was unconscious, his face pale and streaked with blood, an oxygen mask covering his mouth. But it was him. She knew his profile. She knew the hard line of his jaw. "Sir, can you confirm?" the reporter shouted at a detective. "Is that Dominic Moretti?" The detective ignored her, but the camera zoomed in. A second gurney was wheeled out, this one with a black bag zipped over the top. "We can confirm," the reporter's voiceover said, "that the rival head, Antonio Silva, was pronounced dead at the scene. Dominic was alive, but he was hurt, badly." "He's under arrest," the reporter continued. "Officers are riding in the ambulance with him. After this, Dominic Moretti is being taken into police custody." Maya's hand flew to her mouth. The letter she had found. His letter. Clutched in her other hand. He wasn't dead. He was arrested. Maya, Eli said, his voice small. Is he okay? I don't know. Honey, she whispered, her eyes glued to the screen, her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. I don't know. The next few days were a blur of terrifying silence. The guards at the estate remained, but they were tense. They were no longer protecting her. They were hiding her. Marco appeared on the second day, his face grim. He's alive, was all he said. He's at the hospital, under guard. He lost a lot of blood, again, but he's stable. He's being charged with everything. What about us? Maya asked. You stay here. You are the only thing he cares about. You and the boy are to stay here until we know what's next. What's next arrived 3 days later, not as a threat, but as an offer. 2 black sedans, official government vehicles, pulled up the long drive. Marco met them at the gate. Maya watched from the window. After a heated, low-voiced argument, Marco relented. 2 people walked into the house, a man and a woman, dressed in bland, professional suits. They were not cops. They were something else. Miss Maya Collins? The woman asked. She had a cold, assessing gaze. I'm Agent Price. This is Agent Heller, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need to talk. They sat in the grand, opulent living room. Eli was upstairs, with 2 of Marco's men. You're in a great deal of trouble. Miss Collins, Agent Price began, placing a thin file on the coffee table. You are a material witness to, and an accessory after the fact for, the head of the Moretti crime family. I don't know what you're talking about, Maya lied, her voice shaking. Please, Heller said, his voice deceptively friendly. We know everything. We know about the blood donation at the clinic. We know he's been paying your brother's medical bills. We know about the penthouse, the dinner. We know he has you here, under armed guard. We know he just eliminated his competition. Dominic Moretti is going to prison for the rest of his life. The only question is, are you going with him? What? What do you want? Your testimony, Price said, leaning forward. You are the one person who can tie him to the clinic. The one person who can speak to his operations. You give us Dominic Moretti. You tell us everything you know, everything you saw, everything he said, in exchange. We offer you protection. Protection, Maya repeated, the word tasting like ash. Witness Protection Program, Heller said. For you and your brother, new names, new city, new life, clean slate. Your brother gets the best medical care. You get to be free of this. Free of him. Maya looked at their cold, expectant faces. They were offering her an escape, the very thing she had wanted, a normal life, safe, with Eli. All she had to do was betray the man who had just gone to war for her, the man who had held her while she wept, the man whose blood... No, the man who had her blood. She thought of the letter, tucked in her pocket. I will honor the sacrifice you made. No, she said. The agents blinked. I'm sorry, Price said. No, Maya repeated, her voice stronger. She stood up. I'm not your witness. I'm not your ticket. I don't know anything. I was never there. He's just a man I delivered food to. You have nothing. Heller's friendly mask dropped. Miss Collins, you are making a catastrophic mistake. When Moretti goes down, the state will look very closely at your brother's case. A guardian with known ties to organized crime. They'll take him from you. Miss Collins. They'll put him in the system. Is that what you want? It was the threat Tyler had used. But this time, it was real. Get out, Maya said, her voice shaking, but not with fear. With rage. Get out of this house. You'll be hearing from us, Price said, Maug snatching her file. And from Child Protective Services. When they were gone, Maya collapsed. She had refused to betray him, and in doing so, she had just declared war on the federal government. She found Marco. They're going to try to take Eli, she said, her voice raw. Marco's face was grim. He warned me they might. He gave me instructions, an account, for his lawyers. No, Maya said. Not his lawyers, my lawyers. I'm not a victim. Marco, I'm not a prisoner. I'm all he has left. For the next 2 weeks, Maya did not hide. She left the estate, flanked by Marco, and she fought. She used the money from Dominic's account to hire the most ruthless family law attorney in Brookmore. She gathered statements from Eli's doctors, his teachers. She liquidated her parents' old life insurance policy. She rallied support, not as a mobster's woman, but as a sister. She fought the state with a ferocity that stunned them, proving she was, and always had been, Eli's only and best protector, and they backed down. The case was dismissed. Eli was safe. Weeks passed. Winter turned the estate's grounds white. Dominic had been moved from the hospital to a high-security federal prison, awaiting trial. The news was full of his downfall. Maya, having secured Eli, finally used the visitor's pass his lawyer had sent. The prison was a gray, hopeless place. She was searched, processed, and led through a series of buzzing, clanging steel doors. He was sitting at a table behind a thick pane of glass, waiting for her. He was thinner, pale. He wore a drab prison uniform. His arm was in a sling, but his eyes, when he saw her, his eyes were the only part of him that was free. She sat down. She picked up the phone. He did the same. "You came," he said, his voice rough, static over the line. "I came," she whispered. They just looked at each other for a full minute, a silent, desperate conversation. "Eli," he said, finally. He's safe. He's good. He's asking about you. I told him you were on a business trip." A faint, pained smile touched his lips. "A business trip, I like that. The FBI came to see me," she said. His smile vanished. The cold, hard mask was back. "What did they offered me a deal. Me and Eli. A new life. If I testified against you." He didn't breathe. He just waited, his knuckles white on the receiver. "I told them no," she said. He closed his eyes, a single, sharp exhale shuddering out of him. When he opened them, they were wet. Dominic Moretti, the Dawn of Brookmore, was crying. "Maya," he choked. "Why? Why would you do that? I would have understood. I wanted you to be free." "I know," she said, a tear tracing its own path down her cheek. "But they don't get to have you, and they don't get to have me, and they especially don't get to have Eli." She told him about the lawyer, about the fight. He listened, his expression a mixture of awe, horror, and a love so profound it almost looked like pain. You fought them," he whispered. "You fought the Federals and the state, for me." "No," she said, pressing her hand to the glass. "I fought for us." He pressed his own hand to the glass, his fingers lining up with hers. "It's done. Maya, the family, the business. I'm stepping down. I've given it to my uncle. Marco he's retired. He's outside, waiting for you. He'll be your driver." "What? What are you talking about? I'm done. This life, it cost me. It almost cost me you. When I get out, if I get out, I'm not Dominic Moretti, the boss. I'm just Dom, the logistics guy. You're doing that for me?" "I'm doing it," he said, his voice raw. "For that man who was bleeding in the alley, the one you saved. He deserves a chance to live." A year later, the trial was a circus. But without Maya's testimony, the federal case was circumstantial. They got him on a slew of lesser charges, conspiracy, money laundering, but the murder charges, the ones that would have put him away for life, they didn't stick. He was sentenced to 5 years, with parole in 2, and then, on a rainy Tuesday in November, a technicality, a mistrial on the key conspiracy charge, a flaw in the warrant. His lawyers, the best in the nation, had found a crack, and he was released. Maya was waiting outside the federal courthouse. She had been there for 6 hours, standing in the rain, just as she had been that night at the diner. Marco was beside her, holding a large black umbrella over her, but she was soaked. The doors opened, the press surged forward, a wall of cameras and shouting, and he emerged. He was limping, the leg that had been shot never fully healing. He was pale. He was thin. He was in a cheap suit his lawyer had brought him. He was no longer a king. He was just a man. He scanned the crowd, his eyes desperate, searching, and then he saw her. The world stopped. The cameras, the shouting, it all faded into a dull roar. He walked, his limp pronounced, pushing past the reporters. She broke away from Marco, running. She met him on the courthouse steps, launching herself into his arms. He grunted in pain as she hit him, but his arms, his good arm, came around her, crushing her to him. "You're here." He breathed into her hair. "I'm here," she sobbed. "I'm here." He pulled back, his hands framing her face, and he kissed her. It was not the desperate, passionate kiss of the estate. It was not the fearful goodbye. It was slow. It was desperate. It was real. It was the kiss of a man who had been drowning and had just taken his first breath. It tasted of rain and relief and, for the first time, of a future. The final scene. It is 1 year later. The place is Maya's. A small, bright diner in a quiet, working-class neighborhood. It's clean, smells of fresh coffee and bacon, and is full. Maya, now 26, is at the counter, ringing up a customer. She wears an apron, her hair is in a messy bun, and she is laughing. A 17-year-old Eli, taller, healthier, his chest broad, comes out of the kitchen carrying a heavy tub of plates. "Hey, Maya, table 4 needs a check." "On it, kid." "Did you finish your homework?" "Almost. Dom's helping me with the calculus." Maya smiles. She looks back toward the kitchen. The door swings open and he's there. Dominic. He's 35. There are flecks of gray at his temples. He limps. He wears a white apron stained with flour. He is quiet. The fierce, terrifying energy is gone, replaced by a calm, steady peace. He is washing dishes. "Hey," he says, seeing her watching. He dries his hands. "We're low on onions." "I'll add it to the list," she says. He walks over to Eli, who is struggling with the math textbook. Dominic leans over, his brow furrowed, and points to the page. He starts explaining the equation, his voice low and patient. Eli nods, and then he laughs. A real, genuine laugh. Dominic laughs with him, a quiet, rusty sound, as if he's not used to it, but it's real. Maya watches the two of them, the two men in her life, the brother she fought for and the man she saved, her two survivors. Dominic looks up, catches her eye. He doesn't say anything. He just smiles, a simple, uncomplicated smile, the smile of Dom Rossi, the logistics guy. Maya turns back to the counter, her heart so full it aches. She whispers to herself, to the universe, to the man who was once a bleeding stranger in an alley, "I'd still give you my blood." Thank you so much for listening to this story. I truly hope you enjoyed it. My name is Gemini, and I love sharing these tales with you. If you like the story, I would be so grateful if you would subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories. Please, share your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all, and I would love to know what you think. And just for fun, let us know where in the world you are listening from, in English. Thank you again for your time, and I hope to see you in the next story.